But that is an hour from now. Right now, we're here to talk hockey, and we've got a great man here to do it. It's Mr. Colin Loughran. Colin, you got us. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, Alex. Hey, Mike. How are you?
Boy, I'm doing fantastic, and I'm so happy for you, man, to get to be able to cover some Rangers playoff games because, man, I am sure that electricity in the Garden, you have felt it in your spine, even though you're a Bruins fan. I'm sure it's been some fun playoffs. What was your experience at Game 3, and what is your thoughts on the Rangers' comeback over these last couple games in the series?
You know, as a lifelong New Yorker, I'm still able to feel that electricity, and Game 7 might have been the loudest I've ever heard any arena I've ever been in as a fan or as a reporter. I mean, when Panarin put away that goal to end the series, the place went nuts. This team has played tremendously the last two games against Carolina, which is shocking considering really Game 2 was horrible. I mean, on offense, you couldn't get anything cooking. You did decently on defense, but when you're playing a team that's as good at puck control as Carolina, that's not going to cut it. You're going to have to show what you got offensively to match it up tit for tat.
Yeah, and something that you mentioned there about the Rangers, Mike, is the fact that they've now got 5 straight home playoff wins. That matches a record. They've done this a few times now, but it was set all the way back in '94 during their Cup run then. This is a team that's got a certain amount of energy on their home ice, and now the question is how they're going to play in Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Can they win on the road? That was probably their struggle point in the Pittsburgh Penguins series, obviously, and they're going to have to do it against the Hurricanes team that's great at home, and you have to steal one now because you don't have that home ice advantage. And I guess, Colin, this is my question for you. Who's the guy, who's the player that needs to get it going to be able to take a game on the road? And I think Shesterkin's probably the easy answer, so we'll leave him out of it.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, Shesterkin would definitely be the easy answer.
No easy answers
Struggled on the
We're making it
road.
hard for you. We got to make it hard for you.
A little bit challenging. I'm going to go with Chris Kreider, though, in terms of someone that I look at as a must-see guy this season. He's been great, but really he struggled on the road in the playoffs. We saw that in Game 2. He was visibly frustrated with some of the calls that went against him. He gave the Canes a couple of easy power play chances. He looked a lot better in Games 3 and 4. It remains to be seen if he's able to carry over that energy into Game 5 in Carolina. But if he can, I really like the Rangers' chances to steal a game because all you got to do is win one. Then you get it back to Garden for Game 6. Anything can happen in that building.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way you got to look at it, Colin. And something that I love that you mentioned there, too, is the fact that this series has gotten a little bit rough and tumble the last couple games. There was that big hit by Jacob Trouba the other night that kind of shook up the arena and changed the flow of that game. And really, after the Rangers got beaten up the first couple games, they've returned the favor a lot here in Games 3 and 4. I'm curious, from your perspective, what has kind of been your take on the physicality of this series and which team is kind of benefiting more from that?
I think initially Carolina had benefited more from it because they had someone like Tony DeAngelo who just lives for it. But I think once the Rangers got that fire lit under them, they were able to bark right back. I mean, something they did tremendously well in Game 4 was block Carolina's shot. The numbers will tell you Carolina controlled the puck for most of that game. They even might have gotten more shots off, but the Rangers had better chances because they're willing to take contact with the puck. They're able to get chances on the rush on the other end. See, the misconception is that against a team like Carolina, you're probably not going to keep the puck away from them for very long. Instead, you got to hope that your defensemen are able to block the puck and create chances offensively from that. They were able to do that really well. Someone like Ryan Lindgren, who's been through a lot of injuries this playoff, really the season as a whole, stepped up in that fashion. Jacob Trouba, as you mentioned, Alex, he's a big hitter, also a guy that's willing to take contact. Initially, yeah, the Canes benefited from that with Tony DeAngelo kind of showing everyone his antics, throwing his stick every which way onto the ice. He did the same thing against Boston, but once the Rangers realized that they weren't being taken seriously, they barked right back in the way that they were able to, and that was by blocking shots and playing physical on defense. And then on offense, once you do that, you don't have to play as rough on the forecheck because that's a matchup you're never going to win against a team like Carolina.
Something I touched on was the home and away splits. Carolina yet to lose at home this playoffs, and they've been undefeated. Been winless on the road. And the Rangers, on the flip side of that, they've only won one game on the road. It was Penguins Game 6. Colin,
when they needed it. Yeah.
Yes, when they needed it. Colin, is there anything you saw maybe in that Game 6 game that said the Rangers did this right on the road, and maybe it's something they learned from or maybe something they can carry into now as they go try to steal one in Carolina?
No disrespect to Penguins fans or Pittsburgh's franchise. Playing in Carolina is going to be a lot different than playing in Pittsburgh. Neither arena is a cakewalk, but Carolina just has something different going on the last couple of years. I mean, their nickname is a bunch of jerks, is what they've called the team. If you go in there, you're going to have to play with a certain brand of swagger, and I think they can definitely do that. So I look at game one as more of the prototype that had a win there, in that you're going to have to accept you're going to lose on the forecheck most likely. It doesn't mean you stop trying on the forecheck, but accepting that going in is going to help you play smarter defensively and really just be willing to take blocks. That falls on the defenseman. I mean, I had done a piece for FUV about the Rangers defenseman because I felt so strongly.
Defense on Broadway.
I have to plug it. I mean, but really, they've done a good job in games 3 and 4. A guy like Keandre Miller, he's so young, but he's not afraid to fight back. He's been going right back at Jacob Slade and Tony DeAngelo. I think that's the Rangers' best bet, is to play really rough on defense, except you're going to have to block a ton of shots. Otherwise, Igor is going to be under a lot of pressure, and not even the best goalie can stop everything.
Well, so I'll get you out of here on this one, Colin. You talk about the fact that, you did the report on the defense, you did the report on the goalkeeping, and the Rangers historically struggled against Carolina, but now it looks like they're maybe figuring something out. If you had to put your money on it right now, 2-2, where does this series go in Game 5, and who wins it overall, if you had to give us your answer?
Oof, that's tough.
Yeah, I got to ask it, though. I have to.
I'll say this much. I think it's a one-goal game, either way. I don't think a team wins by more than 1 goal in Game 5. Judging on momentum, I really like the Rangers' chances. I think that's, maybe a little bit of a cop-out answer on my part because I love covering this team. I've gotten to see them since day one, but I think that's also because I know this team too well to not think they're going to go in there and absolutely shock everybody.
Colin,
no one expects the Rangers to win this game.
Before we let you go, this is something I do want to know. Is this the game for the Rangers to win on the road? Is it now or never, or do you think they can win a Game 7 maybe?
This would be the game. I think if you have to play a Game 7 in Carolina, you're really hedging your bets. It's not impossible, but it's not likely. You have to win Game 5 and then go back to your house and win Game 6.
Well, it's certainly different than having Game 7 on your home ice, that's for sure, Colin. And definitely for your sake, hoping that we do get another Rangers series win and hope to get you another one in the Garden. So thanks for taking some time with us, Colin. Appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good show, guys.
So now someone who's been keeping quiet during this segment, who is the guy who has all the answers for us, is Lou Orlando. So, Lou, just give us your synopsis of what you felt about this series so far and where your head is at right now with it.
I would say the big key for the Rangers, I think it remains their key. I think it was one of their main goals going in was you got to score first. Because I think if you score first, you completely throw Carolina out of whack a little bit. Their defense is so good that if they can score first, they can just kind of not hang back offensively, but they can just do the magic that they have defensively and just make the game a nightmare. And I think you look at the 3 games where the Rangers score first, I think it's the 3 games where you feel the Rangers really played well. Even Game 1 where they end up losing in overtime, they've got a 1-0 lead for most of that game. You feel like, wow, you're really impressed with how well the Rangers are playing. And it takes a crazy Sebastian Aho goal and maybe a little bit of a defensive lapse there, and also Rangers not able to get those second and third goals that we saw them get in games 3 and 4. But when the Rangers get on the board first, it really puts the pressure on Carolina, because now they have to kind of create a little bit of an offensive attack. And you've heard a lot about their power play is struggling. I think it's 8 for their last 91. So their power play is in shambles. Rangers' power play looking pretty good, especially at home, and that was a big thing, I think, when you look at the way their power play was at home as compared to in Carolina, where they had a 4-minute power play, and Carolina was the stronger team. When they scored a shorthanded goal, it was like, yeah, you saw that coming. That was how bad that power play had been on the road. So I think that's another big thing, is just you're going to have to score first, because otherwise Carolina defense is just going to take it to task.
Yeah, and I think it starts and ends with Shesterkin. At the end of the day, he's going to keep him in the game. And the Rangers are going to have to try to find a way to win close if Shesterkin plays at his best ability. Both losses in Carolina, Shesterkin only allowing 2 goals. Okay? I mean, you got to be able to win if that's the number you're getting. He hasn't let up more than 3 goals since those 7-goal games in Pittsburgh, games 3 and 4. So he's been on his game, and like you said, Lou, if you get a goal early and then you just put the game in Shesterkin's hands or gloves or however you want to say it as a goalie, I'm taking that if I'm a Rangers fan, but it's getting that first goal, and you need to rely on your goal scorers, Kreider, Panarin. Those are the guys that are going to do the job for you. And Panarin, one of those younger guys, but this is his moment to step up. But something I do want to say about the Rangers, this season's been a success. They've exceeded expectations. 100%. And if you can play a close series with the Carolina Hurricanes, I think you're excited about the future, even if you lose. So it's a win where you are right now, no matter what.
I went into this series thinking Carolina's the worst possible matchup for this team.
Historically,
just in terms of how good their
yeah, it's been
defense is
bad
and how
historically.
much they beat up on them last year. I kind of looked at the teams across the league and I went, yeah, Carolina's the one team that like really scares me. Like this just doesn't bode well for the Rangers game. I think any other team, even Tampa Bay, that's got that experience, I feel like, listen, we got Igor, we have a shot, and this Carolina was the one team where I was like it's going to be tough even on Igor. I think that's the great thing about having Igor is that you can play a game on the road against Carolina and feel like, hey, maybe 1 or 2 goals is enough for it. Maybe we only need 1 or 2.
You need a power play. You need a mistake by Carolina, and you're back in the game.
Well, that's what's funny, too, because the narrative in the Penguin series was that he was almost having a bad series, so to speak, and he got a lot of the blame for what went wrong in that series.
That series should. If they win Game 1, it's a totally different series.
Well, that's the point, right?
He
lingered being out for 2 games too completely.
It's
Like
mostly a
that
defensive
defense
problem.
in front of the
Yes.
net was so bad. I thought, especially when they went down 3-1, like the defense did Igor no favors. I didn't think it was his best series, but he really had.
And Game 1, he was unbelievable. I mean, you have to be able to win with that kind of goalie performance. They don't. He's been good enough to win them games. That's without a doubt. And also, a point I want to make: the Rangers are playing with house money at this point. I think
that's interesting, yeah.
Because they've got nothing to lose.
I don't know if they feel like they're playing with house money, though. I think that I think the pressure's still on. I think they feel like they can beat Carolina.
Game 1 was theirs to lose, basically. So
who's got more pressure right now?
Well,
Rangers coming off the back of 2 wins.
I mean, Carolina's got more pressure right now just because they just dropped 2 and they had a chance to seal this off. But I would agree with you, right? Like the Rangers are at a point where it's like, anything they do now, you just kind of have to be happy. If they lose here to Carolina, that's tough, but this season's been amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they're looking at it like, man, this is house money. We can just go out with, like, whatever happens. I think that they're feeling a little bit of pressure.
I think it's part of the team's attitude in general. Like we mentioned, like from our perspective, yes, it's already been a successful season, regardless of what happens. But this is a team that has those aspirations that go beyond it. They're probably thinking they could beat the Lightning without any question, right? And that's why I think this team has been so successful is that even when their backs are against the wall, that mentality doesn't change. They keep their foot on the gas pedal, and good things happen. Now, the question is, can you do it in Carolina? That's really what it comes down to, and I think they just might, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if I had to say right now, I think that, like Colin said when I asked him the question, this is the game for the Rangers to win.
Yeah.
I think this is the one they need to win, and I think they would. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, just because they're coming off the back of 2 wins. They're playing some of the best hockey they have all season, I think, considering where they were after Game 4 with the Penguins, and they've been great ever since. Those 2 losses at first to the Hurricanes, but they lost close. They just didn't, they couldn't find the puck in the back of the net, and that's going to happen. So I like the Rangers to win tonight, but I will say this. I talked about house pressure. I talked about house money. I talked about the pressure. If they move past this Carolina series, there's none of that against the Lightning.
Yeah.
They're back-to-back champions. They've been there before. There's no pressure.
They're not
going
to slip up either. Yeah,
they're the veteran experience, and that's when the real test is, I think. And obviously, 2-2 series. It's it could be Carolina, it could be the Rangers. But I'm going to take New York to win this one.
I feel good about the Rangers in Game 5. I think the one thing I'm really looking at is Mika Zibanejad. I feel like he's the X factor.
Yeah.
He played really well at home, but I think the one thing, right, you look at going to Carolina. Now Carolina gets last change, and what they did on the road was they put Jordan Stahl, who's an amazing defender, on Mika, and Mika was silent those first 2 games. And you feel like when Mika disappears, sometimes that Rangers offense disappears.
And when he plays well, it usually correlates.
He
to really
feels like
good
the X factor.
blue-shirt
Like
hockey.
Kreider had the 1 goal in Game 3, but like Colin said, he was a little quiet. Rangers still able to play well. Panarin's been kind of on and off throughout this postseason. He shows up sometimes, other times not so much. Rangers have been able to win without him, but it feels like if there's no Mika, that's been a problem for them. So if they can scheme, maybe get him away from Jordan Stahl, it's going to be tough again because Carolina has last change. They can set up that matchup. But if that's something that he can deal with and fight through, that gives the Rangers a really good shot. Either way, I just feel like, I know Gerard Gallant said, hey, we don't really believe in momentum, but I feel like they played so well at home, they can come back to Carolina and just take it to them.
Well, certainly when you go on the road, that does change momentum. And I'm going to give you guys a wild card. I think the Hurricanes bounce back and win Game 5. I think the Rangers win 6 and 7. I think something about this team that when they go into these hostile environments, they play better in tough situations. I think when they're down 2-0, that's when you saw the best version of this team. So for some reason, I don't expect Carolina to lose 3 times in a row. They've only done it twice this season. It's not something I expect to happen. But certainly, I just think the Rangers aren't going to bow out. We're getting to Game 7 either way to me, and then whatever happens at that point.
What you said, it's probably worse for just my physical health in general, but that's a pretty good.
That's
a great
outcome.
If they win a Game 7 on the road in Carolina,
at that point, they can make it.
I'm not the person to get your hockey opinions from. So let's carry on to the second series. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning.